call to order the Town of Concord Select Board meeting for the 22nd of May. This meeting is being recorded, and I think all of our mics should be on now. I'm Jane Hotchkiss, I'm the chair, and I want to start with the consent agenda. All right, so we have the honor of accepting gifts from an anonymous donor of $2,000 to Middlesex Jazz Festival gift account. Cecilia Reynolds has donated $1,000 to the Carousel preschool gift account. We are issuing several one-day special licenses from the Concord Lions Club, 622, for an all-alcohol event at 54 Old Road to 9 Acre Corner. Gaining Ground will be hosting an event on the 11th of June from 5 to 7 at 341 Virginia Road, all alcohol. Saltbox Farm will be hosting two events on the 6th and 7th of June. The first from 6 to 10, the second from 4 to 8, both at 40 Westford Road, and they will be wine and malt beverages. And then Concilium Partners will be hosting an event on the 5th of June from 11:30 in the morning until 7 at night at 246 Old Road to 9 Acre Corner at the Country Club. Wine and malt beverages. The Silent Fun campership has camperships in the amount of $7,500. Now that looks like a gift, but I'm not entirely sure. We'll accept that to the Silent Fund. And then we have tour guide renewals from Ronnie Olinsky, as well as I seem to have seen several others we need to issue. Tour guide, excuse me for a second here. Tour guide licenses for Alita Orchowski and Donald McKinney, as well as Ronnie Olinsky. And finally, we have a proclamation request for Henry David Thoreau Day, July 12th, 2017. And that, let's see, where did my proclamation go? Let's see. So we are hereby proclaiming that whereas among Concord's most renowned transcendentalists, Henry David Thoreau was born 200 years ago on July 12th. Actually, I don't think I have to read this, do I? This is to be announced on the 12th of July. Looking forward to that, and we are so proclaiming. We're also proclaiming that Public Works Day, Public Works Week, which will be this week, the 22nd, starting today, the 22nd day of May. And that proclamation, whereas public works services are an integral part of our citizens' everyday lives and quality of life, and whereas the support of an understanding and informed citizenry is vital to the efficient operation of public works systems and programs such as water, sewer, engineering, streets, highways, solid waste, recycling, parks, athletic fields, fleet maintenance, and cemeteries. Sounds like everything. Whereas the health and safety and comfort of Concord is greatly dependent on these services and facilities, and whereas the planning, design, construction, and care of these facilities are dependent upon the effort, skill, and commitment of Concord Public Works team, and whereas the efficiency of the qualified and dedicated Public Works team members is materially influenced by the citizens' understanding of the importance of the work they perform. Board and the Town of Concord, Massachusetts do hereby proclaim the week of May 22nd through May 27th as Concord Public Works Week. And call upon all Concordians to acquaint themselves with the issues involved in providing our public works services and to recognize the contributions which Public Works makes every day to our health, safety, comfort, and quality of life. Proclaim this day, 22nd of May, 2017. I certainly am grateful to that.
Absolutely. I move to approve the consent agenda as read.
Second.
And on we go to the town manager's report. Welcome back, Chris.
Thank you very much. Oh, need a vote?
Oh, let's go to the, I'm getting ahead of myself. Do I hear a motion? I did.
Second. We just
All in favor?
Aye.
Now, Madam Straight.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The building department's been quite busy. We have promoted Lori Lavoli to the position of building commissioner and then backfilled her vacant spot recently with a fellow that will start next week, I believe. And there's been a lot of permits that have been issued, including a building permit issued for the phase 1 of the Mill Tarry project on Lowell Road. And phase 1 consists of the parking deck on town land and the construction of driving piles and insulating the concrete will begin shortly.
Is that off of Kai's Road or?
It will be closest to Kai's Road. The address, the street address, I think, is Lowell Road, but the deck is closer to Kai's Road. The building commissioner also issued a zoning violation notice to the owner of 80 Highland Street for advertising an Airbnb. This is not the first one that's been issued around town. In order, you can utilize your property for an Airbnb, but you have to have a special permit from the Board of Appeals. So that notice has been issued, and the first is a warning, and then fines follow after that for non-compliance. Planning board is meeting tomorrow night. They'll be discussing the 70-foot towers the MBTA is proposing to put in within their right-of-way, located close to Arena Terrace, Neshoba Road, and Bradford Street. The planning board will also be discussing tomorrow night phase 2 of the Black Birch PRD project. The Natural Resources had a lengthy meeting last Thursday, I guess, and continued the discussion on dog restrictions on some conservation parcels and also possible parking arrangement on Punkatasset. The Lowell Road Culvert project began work today. It's expected to take 2 months. It's a 2-phase project. The first phase that we're experiencing now will be the installation of new drainage on Lowell Road between Westford Road and Lindsay Pond. And the second stage will be the removal and replacement of the box culvert that's in that general area. So we ask for folks' patience during the construction process, particularly those members that live on Lowell Road. New town clerk, Kari Tari, will start work on May 30th. Again, she's leaving the position in Westford to return to Concord, having worked here some years ago. Zoning Board of Appeals and the Planning Board will hold a joint meeting on Tuesday, June 6th, for the purpose of discussing the Cuca Road PRD. I think it was Planned Residential Development. 11 units are proposed, so they'll be having a joint meeting. And that's off Main Street near Florio Drive. Emerson Umbrella has requested approval to add spaces at the municipal parking lot located shared between Emerson Umbrella and the library. They want to add 20 spaces, but most of them are for compact cars, and we do have certain rules and regulations that determine how many compact cars are allowed within a lot. So I'll be speaking with the town engineer and public works director, as well as with Jerry Wedge from the Emerson Umbrella about that. And lastly, the planning board, the long-range plan committee, is scheduled for next Wednesday, May 31st. The kickoff event for Envision Concord, a bridge to 2030, and they're hoping to get a lot of people involved in the comprehensive long-range plan discussion and really want to hear from people's ideas of what Concord should look like in the coming decade. That's all I have.
Thanks, Chris.
So do you endorse compact car parking?
If you try to squeeze your SUV into a compact space, I don't know the answer to that. I think it's discouraged.
I think that's called hopeful.
Chris, I noticed that Carlisle voted their town meeting to approve their share of the cap, and that it now has to go to a town vote. Do you know when that vote is going to be?
In Carlisle, don't know when the election was scheduled. It's
That's-
similar to
that-
Concord.
If that passes, then the next step will be to proceed pretty quickly to do that capping.
Typically, yes, that's right. I think they have a design, the school committee has a design ready to go, and they're just looking for the funding approval
We're talking about the landfill?
Right.
at the high school.
Well, that's on our June 8th.
Carlisle is the southern
Right.
direction too.
Yeah.
It's not set.
Town meeting voted, but now the town has to.
Right.
And I think they have 90 days from the time of a town meeting vote. Is that right, Carrie? 90 days to schedule a debt exclusion or override vote after 60?
Did I see the paper? I think the state did some type of regulation of the Airbnb, so we may want to keep an eye on that as well.
I know it
We're
was,
talking about
I know it was under discussion.
And they were also going to allow, at least they were proposing to allow a local
Control.
tax,
Yeah,
like room tax and the other
Right.
tax we have here, but I didn't know
Yeah.
it passed.
So
I thought I saw something, because it's worth at least keeping an eye out on that.
That's something we can ask our local representative.
Is an easy way to do it?
All right, seeing that it's past 7:05, and we're scheduled to open a public hearing on the change of manager for the Skidwood Sportsman's Club. Do I hear a motion to open our public hearing?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. So, is there anyone here from the, please come up to the microphone, introduce yourselves. Come on down.
You can't sit.
I
can't sit. So you have back surgery.
Oh, I'm sorry. Would you like to review the reason that we are here?
Sure.
Introduce yourselves?
I'm Brian Hevron. I'm the proposed new manager. Our current manager is starting a business and he doesn't have time to do it anymore.
Okay,
I've had an extensive background in the restaurant and bar business, going back over 50 years. I'm retired, so I have time to do it. The board has approved my selection at the club. I'm looking forward to your approval.
okay. And I see here that you have been tips trained and it's like everything else is in order. Any questions? We're good.
I'm going to be the assistant to
And your
Mr.
name is?
Heffron, Michael Pratt. Yes.
And,
I've also been tip certified and will be helping out if he's on vacation or whatnot.
okay. And I don't believe either of you gave us your address, which is usually part of the,
Our address? Oh, I thought it was on the phone.
for those who
Oh, I'm sorry.
participate here,
I
they're
live
they're
in,
watching.
131A Bolton Road in Harbor, Mass.
I live at 205 Great Road, Acton, Mass.
Right.
Yes.
And now, any further questions from the board?
The application's in order, police department's reviewed it, had no concerns.
Looks pretty straightforward to me. What about the public? Anybody here with a question? Okay,
I move to close the hearing.
Second?
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
I move to approve the change of manager to Brian John Hevron from Scuttequid Sportsman's Club off Old Mill Road. The manager must be engaged in the actual management of the licensed premises as his main occupation and must be present on the licensed premises not less than 30 hours per week during the hours when alcoholic beverages are sold, contingent upon ABCC approval.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Now, I noticed here we missed adding the motion to approve our alternate manager.
Oh, yes.
So perhaps we can cover that.
And I also move to approve the change of assistant manager to Mr. Michael Francis Pratt, Jr. Is that enough?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
All set?
Thank you.
Thanks for coming by.
Thank you. Have a good evening. Thank you.
You bet.
Okay. All right. Now I believe we have the pleasure of hearing from Delia.
Joan?
Okay. Conservation restrictions?
Tie it. Do you mean to tie it into the? Sure. Do you know how to do that?
It's just another.
Okay. Ready? Yeah. Everything's on.
Pausing for technical connection. So we're going to hear about the conservation restrictions 220.
That's the internet. You want the 910 cord or?
Yeah, if you have an HDMI. do it.
On 221 and 265 Balls Hill Road. And we'll be hearing from
Try that. Yeah, that's it.
Natural Resources Division Manager Delia. Are we live? Let's see. Picks a village.
Sorry about that.
Something. You get to watch Netflix.
That's not connected to the feed yet.
I can do this without the maps.
There we go.
1 second, but it should come up also.
Yeah, probably the projector.
Yes. All right. So please introduce yourself. For those
Good evening, Delia Kay, Natural Resources Director for the town, and with me is Joan Ferguson, Chair of the Concord Land Conservation Trust. Here to talk about 3 conservation restrictions, and we'll start with the October Farm Riverfront conservation restriction. The restriction is an 80-acre parcel that was acquired recently by the town and the land trust. It's outlined in purple on this map, and I'll zoom to a more zoomed-in image, but just to give you the context of where this land lies, it is off Balls Hill Road in the northern part of town. It's sort of nestled in a sort of elbow of the Concord River, has over a mile of river frontage, and is across from Great Meadows National Wildlife Refuge. And this piece of land has long been identified by the town as a priority for protection for its high conservation values, historic and scenic resources, as well as by the town for its importance in water supply protection. And outside of the purple boundary, you can see a parcel in blue in the northwest of the, sort of at the end of Balls Hill Road. That was acquired by the town in the early 2000s. It's a 17-acre parcel that was acquired for water supply purposes. Not currently in use, but has great potential for future use. So the land acquisition is split. The blue in the October Farm Riverfront parcel is land that is under the care and custody of the Public Works Commission. In the green is land that is under the care and control of the Natural Resources Commission, and in the sort of yellowish-orange is land that is owned by the Concord Land Conservation Trust. So these 80 acres were acquired using a number of funding mechanisms. CPA funds were used in part for the town acquisitions, and as a result of that required a conservation restriction be placed on those parcels. Land grant money was awarded by the state, the amount of $400,000, and that program requires a conservation restriction over the entire 80 acres. So what this land is also, I should have mentioned, is very valuable in terms of rare species habitat. It's listed both as priority and estimated habitats. It's got 4 state listed species, at least 3 potential vernal pools. The Land Trust has done some preliminary work and identified 3 probable pools that can be certified, as well as observing one rare species out there. also mapped by the state as a high priority for protection because of its high value ecological significance. The CR that will be held by the town is over 47 acres of land trust land, and the CR that will be held by the town, by the land trust, is over 11 acres of the Public Works Commission land and 22 acres of the Natural Resources Commission land. CRs are slightly unusual in that they do allow for wells to be constructed on those parcels. No well houses or other kind of structures, but it does have the ability to put in wells and any infrastructure that is associated with that to be located at a pump or to tie into a pump house that would be on the Public Works Commission lands that is outside of this purple boundary of the October Farm Riverfront property. Public access is provided throughout the parcel. There are existing trails out there. And for these CRs, I should mention, there's a possibility that the Public Works Commission has requested, you'll see going from the end of Bowles Hill Road, there's a dashed line on the USGS that goes down sort of south onto the land trust property. That is an existing trail. And it goes past right by one of the existing wells, and it is not something that's anticipated now or may not happen in the future, but the Public Works Commission has requested that the NRC and the Land Trust work to relocate or to place a trail on the Land Trust and Natural Resources Commission land. We are looking to do that. As I said, it's not something that's anticipated to happen, but it could be something 50 years down the line. CRs are perpetual, as you know, so we need to sort of think about every option for these. So what we are looking for tonight is a favorable review of this and acceptance of the CR. It has been, the one that is going to be held by the town has been favorably reviewed by the CRSC. It has been granted by the Land Trust and accepted by the Natural Resources Commission. And as a condition of the reimbursement for the land grant, the reimbursement request needs to be in by June 1st, so that we're in line for June 30th reimbursement on that grant. So I'm hopeful that you will be able to approve these restrictions tonight. Do I hear?
Just for the trail that you're might anticipate it would come from the new small parking area that you have there essentially to the north of the blue area into the green, right?
Yes.
And then
Correct.
Connect down to the yellow of the land trust.
That's right. Just about, it would connect in just above the B in Bowles Hill on the land trust land.
That would be in place in case there was a need to do something in the blue area.
That's correct.
So that there would be access to the land trust land.
Correct.
Any other questions from the board?
And it's for the October Farm Riverfront, right? Okay. So I move to approve a conservation restriction pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Section 31 through 33 of Chapter 184, over 46.68 acres granted by the Concord Land Conservation Trust on May 16, 2017, accepted by the Natural Resources Commission on May 17, 2017, and shown as parcel A 2.3 on a plan entitled Plan of Land in Concord, Massachusetts, Middlesex County, for Concord Land Conservation Trust, dated October 17, 2016, prepared by Stamsky and McNary Incorporated.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. And I also move to approve a conservation restriction pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Section 31 through 33 of Chapter 184, over 33.09 acres granted by the Natural Resources Commission on May 17, 2017, and accepted by the Concord Land Conservation Trust on May 18, 2017, and shown as Lot 2, Parcel A 2.1, and Parcel A 2.2 on a plan Massachusetts, Middlesex County, for Concord Land Conservation Trust dated October 17, 2016, prepared by Stansky and McNary Incorporated.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so this is a wealth of riches here.
Thanks a lot.
And now we're moving
All the
on.
work you're doing, both the Land Trust and the NRC.
So the third conservation restriction for your review this evening is on the McGrath land. This is at 449 Barrett's Mill Road and 42A Barrett's Mill Road, shown as parcel B and parcel A on the graphic. Again, CPA funds were used in part to acquire this land, this land being the house lot, which is parcel B, from the McGrath estate when he passed a few years ago. The lands that are in green hatch to the east and west are owned by the town under the custody of the Natural Resources Commission and have been farmed as the land to the north, which is under the school department's care and custody. They have been farmed since the 1600s. It's a historic and scenic landscape. With the town acquiring that land using CPA funds, there was a need to put a restriction on parcel B. Difficult to put a restriction just on parcel B because of the developed nature. It contains the house, the barn, the greenhouse, and farm stand. And so the state recommended doing a tiered CR, which is basically taking another parcel, which is parcel A, and placing restrictions on both of those parcels. And that made it something that the Land Trust was in a position to be able to accept as a conservation restriction because of the high value of that adjacent conservation land for conservation purposes. So this land, as I mentioned, has been farmed continuously since the 1600s. Conservation restriction does allow for the continued agricultural use of this land, and it protects a historic and scenic landscape, as well as it is mapped. The southern portion of parcel A is mapped as rare species habitat, and there is some floodplain and water resources protection. A small amount of the CR in parcel A does have frontage on the Assabet River. And this CR, because parcel B is owned as municipal land under the custody of the Select Board, requires the conveyance of parcel B to the Land Trust. Not the conveyance of the land, conveyance of the conservation restriction to the Land Trust. And the Natural Resources Commission has conveyed parcel A at their May 17th meeting. And then if it is favorable to the board, to approve the restriction over the entire premises, which constitutes parcel A and parcel B.
Are there any questions from the board? Looks like it.
Yep, I move to grant a conservation restriction over 1.9 acres shown as part of parcel B on a plan entitled Plan of Land in Concord, Mass., owned by Patrick McGrath, prepared by Curley Engineering, LLC, dated February 24th, 2012, recorded at the Middlesex Registry of Deeds as Plan Number 609 of 2012, and to approve a conservation restriction pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Sections 31 through 33 of Chapter 184 over 7.12 acres, shown as part of Parcel B on the above reference plan, and Parcel A on a plan of land entitled Plan of Land in Concord, Mass., owned by Francis and Thomas McGrath, prepared by R.D. Nelson, dated December 7, 1970, recorded at the Middlesex Registry of Deeds as Plan Number 449 of 1971.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Four signatures needed.
Okay.
They'll want to wait.
Else to put together. All right, so, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And the asparagus there is excellent.
Thank you. Nice job with the technology.
So we're moving on to our post-town meeting discussions with a discussion of Town Meeting Article 49, a home rule petition allowing Concord to adopt these to finance affordable housing. This would be the adoption that was done on the floor of, as amended by Mr. Tarby. I think, Steve, you had very nicely volunteered to put this.
Yes, it's my pleasure to look into this. I had the pleasure of meeting with the petitioner of the original article submitted to town meeting, Charles Phillips, and we discussed the amendment. It was definitely a enlightening conversation during, debate on this particular article. I think the public was interested in supporting Concord's affordable housing initiatives, and I think the amendment allows for the town to kind of understand further what's necessary to kind of make a lot of these initiatives happen. I think one of the things I agreed with Mr. Phillips was making sure that the amended and approved Article 49 stays true to kind of the intent of his article, which really, and it is stated as such, that Select Board shall appoint a committee to study the affordable housing goals of the town and recommend appropriate measures to fund these goals. The committee shall generally be charged with the responsibility of studying and determining cost-effective means by which the town may fund the continuing expansion of its inventory of affordable housing, and the Select Board shall determine the number and qualifications of the study committee, its precise charge, etc. So, I think the public or the legislative body definitely had questions about affordable housing and wanted to learn more about what the town's been doing. And I think there were some comments about creating this affordable housing committee. Mm-hmm. But I think just to clarify for everyone, the town of Concord, I think for many years has been developing what's known as a housing production plan. It's a 5-year, it's a plan that's developed by the town and the stakeholders, all the committees and our housing groups, and submits that to the state for certification every 5 years. So it kind of renews their study. And we have a current 2015 housing production plan, and it's very extensive in terms of providing background information, demographics, the need for housing, kind of the characteristics of what makes Concord unique in terms of available properties or opportunities for development. And in the end, they provide a summary of goals as well as initiatives that the town should follow. And the goals kind of more in a general conceptual nature state things such as supporting and fostering aging in the community through expansion of a range of affordable housing options. Other goals were related to increasing variety of housing types, creation of affordable rental ownership housing for households with diverse incomes from low to moderate to middle, nurturing and maintaining working partnerships with organizations focusing on addressing affordable housing needs in Concord and the region. There's about 8 goals in this particular production plan, as well as strategies or initiatives that the town should take on. And those are different scales, as well as some are more passive or others more requiring town meeting approval, zoning changes, etc. So.
And I remember one of the things that struck me when we heard this housing production plan given was that what we're trying to meet is a concern that we are going to have a mismatch between what we have in town and what the future needs of our citizens are going to be. And so it's an attempt to point out where we might be at odds.
Right, and trying to develop solutions to fulfill anticipated needs.
Right.
And some of those are listed in our strategies at different scales. So recommends strengthening accessory apartment bylaw. So that's more a private kind of method of increasing units and providing, small scale home housing for various types of families or couples. Various ways of establishing neighborhood conservation districts, strengthening demolition delay bylaw. Some of these have been achieved over time. Encourage the redevelopment in various areas of town, such as the Road Depot or Crosby Market area, somewhere near mass transportation, as well as the center, centers of our town. And some are focused more on some of our housing groups, such as creating new units on Concord Housing Authority property. It also lists in the 2015 plan to create affordable assisted living units at Junction Village, establish buy-down programs, continue to host and support membership in the Regional Housing Service Office. And, there's 14 goals in this production plan. So this plan was developed with full open meeting, public participation. I attended a few of those workshops where the consultant, it was very educational, learning about, how many.
In fact, I think a number of the planning board initiatives, several initiatives came out of this production plan.
Exactly.
Which is the intent.
Yeah, and I think that's the point I'm trying to make is, I think the town does a great job in understanding what our affordable housing needs are and developing a plan that gets certified by the state and the town supports. So it kind of gives our housing groups their marching orders for 5 to 10 years looking forward. So to kind of I don't think the mission of the new committee is really about, questioning this. It's more about, there's some of these initiatives, just to really make them effective, is how can we help fund these programs? So
I would also hope, Steve, that the finance committee voted no on Article 49,
yes,
as did the select board, because there were a lot of financial considerations and concerns. And I hope that the committee will address those as well, because I think that that's really what, if you will, turned the tide. Everybody, I think, had the focus that, this is a desired goal, but the solution that was being proposed may in fact not be the best solution by any means. I mean, it did not consider a whole range of other issues and proposals. And I would hope that this committee would be able to take that on.
And I agree with that. I think what the committee can do is essentially, come up with a method or develop a process, since the production plan is really what you're funding, and it comes out every 5 years. So you can, if this committee can develop a framework or a process that could take the goals, kind of first understand what the cost would be if you fully implemented or could achieve some of these events by our stakeholders. Say
what alternative methods?
Right, and then explain to the town the impacts of whether it's an increase in property tax or a fee as proposed originally in 49. What that potential
or some type of a rental issue.
Yeah.
And I don't think that had been explored. I was interested at the town meeting by how many people, both during this discussion, the Junction Village discussion, professed a good deal of expertise in the housing area, and I assume they were accurate. So I in the town who do have knowledge and experience, and I hope that if they're not on the committee, at least they will come and take an interest in this, because it is a very important issue.
And I agree with that as well. I think at first glance, I'm thinking the breakdown could be between 5, I'll say 9, but I don't want to go that many people, but FinCom representation, perhaps someone more a developer or real estate representative, CHA, either liaison or representative. I think that's something we can talk about. Same for CHDC representation or liaison to participate. I believe the Concord Housing Foundation is very interested in joining in the conversation. I think they should be at the table. Perhaps someone from the assessors committee or board can join us. And as many public, at large folks who are into, it's more finance and being able to study if, what happens when you push and pull fees or income or find, funding in different areas, and what the impacts can be.
Well, one of the things that you note in your recommendations is just ad hoc is how many committees we already have in Concord
Yes,
that are charged
yes.
with or focusing on affordable housing, which is incredibly valuable to the town. But I would also hope that in looking at these next steps, we would find a way to synthesize the intent so that in this committee's recommendations, there could be a path forward that involved the greatest assets.
Right, I agree with that, and I think it's important also to make sure the public's involved in that conversation. Even in the production plan, we list existing local resources and capacity, Concord Housing Foundation, the Housing Development Corporation in town. We have, of course, CPA always there supporting us on this cause, Concord Housing Authority, as well as private developers. And I sent out this little flow chart, but it shows all the players right now who kind of take those goals and can achieve some of those elements. Private developers, hopefully they would do their own thing and somehow with a profit and, in various zoning options, they could contribute to the affordable housing. But to support CHDC and Housing Authority, I think this is where the committee could really help out. And it's first kind of assessing the cost and determining the value of what funding is needed, but also including all the inflows or funding that we're receiving in town right now.
And I'd love to know what other communities have done. I mean, we're not the only ones struggling with this issue. And it'd be interesting to know if there have been other communities that have taken creative approaches.
Right. No, it's true. I know Marcia has been great in providing some information. There's the, we had a lot of funding from the West Metro Home Consortium. We've basically been receiving almost $500,000 in supporting CHA projects. So, there is income coming in, but it's not really helping us achieve all the initiatives that we have in our production plan. So I think that's what this committee could do, is kind of show like how well we're doing. I mean, we're one of the more accomplished towns in achieving affordable housing, but also to get creative and see what other options we can propose to the town, and also analyze it to see if
There's got to be solutions other than cost $400,000 per affordable housing.
Well, it's the funny thing is, it's all about, if you take the strategy of the buy down, the house by house in various neighborhoods, your median income, I think in Concord a family that makes the median income in Concord could afford up to about $455,000. I don't know, maybe that's 2010 numbers, but
Yes.
compared to the median cost of a home or sale of a home, there's a big gap there, and that's what.
But we may not then have to buy it. There may be other solutions.
Could be, yeah. I mean, there's positive and
There are a lot of
negatives
tax
for each of these.
benefits to home ownership that can then be passed on in the form of a rental unit. The owner doesn't have to, he gets the benefits, which would then lower the cost substantially. There are a lot of, I think, creative ways that people who are really in this field might be able to bring down the cost substantially, so.
So, let's see, what else? So, yes, I'm thinking the charter or charge for the committee would be to develop a framework or a process so that every 5 years, it's like an assessment that goes along with the housing production plan. You kind of set this estimated cost impact and then how we can feed into that after you add in CPA contributions, whatever that might be, the home consortium, grants, et cetera, and then what's left, what's the need after that, and apply those ideas that we might be able to come up with that.
Well, maybe we could work together to finalize a charge and then circulate it and discuss the specifics of what a committee would look like and that charge for it at the next.
Just a quick thought, Steve, remember the finance committee can't be a member, so they
So it's more liaison?
They have to,
Okay.
they can have a liaison role, but
Okay.
they can't be on any other town committees. Yeah, I think the idea that you proposed, if we could get an annual handle on what it would take to meet our affordable housing goals now and in the future, and then 2, figure out financial mechanisms for us to get that done.
Right.
Considering what we already have, considering what we might reasonably expect from CPA, and then other good, sound financial mechanisms that would allow us to get.
Exactly. I mean, it's even Marcia sent this out. Sorry, I asked Andrew to print that. I didn't know he'd be out there. But she's been kind of tracking those initiatives of the 2010 plan, 2015 plan, and there's kind of a timetable. Something like this, we can add a column, anticipated cost, and just really roll that into determining how we could get the funding for that. So I think it's a positive thing. I think Charles was pretty on board with the committee as long as the charge was more focused on funding the programs recommended in the initiative of the production plan. So.
Would you like to comment?
Just for a minute, yeah. Thank you. Charles Phillips on 65 Fairhaven Road, author of the original Article 49. I just wanted to make just one thing that hasn't, I don't think, been emphasized quite enough in the discussion is that the fact is affordable housing is expensive. Any way you look at it, any way you can't do creative ways, yes, that's good, but and to make a dent in our affordable housing needs, there needs to be that continuing financing method that would go beyond. That is, I think, the view of a number of us, anyway. Beyond the Community Preservation Act, there needs to be a continuous flow of funding in that can continue to generate more affordable housing on a scale that isn't just one project that takes 10 years to create, but sort of year by year. That was the whole idea of of buying these houses and buying them down, because it's a continuing process. So I really think that's important for the committee to consider.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sean.
And I don't think I heard Steve ignore that. I think what we're describing is a synthesis, to start with a synthesis of all the different mechanisms that exist, and sort of a matching of what's being created, and then where are the holes? What are we not accomplishing in answer to the housing production plan's forecast, so to speak, and getting out in front of that.
So we, annually, as part of the budgeting process and the tax levy process, we forecast growth in town. And we know what if we're gonna have 10 new homes in town, we know what that means in terms of affordable units, if we're going to keep up with our affordable housing goals. So it's possible to get to some, and Charles is right, it isn't a pocket.
Right. Yeah, it's not, yeah.
So it's going to be a substantial sum that we would want to figure out how we could collect on an annual kind of basis. But it really just need to take into account all the sources of funding. And it may be the case that there's not a single source that solves a problem, but it's a combination of making it up, tax, levies, taxes, fees. It could be a combination of things that would get us to some number that would be an annual reoccurring amount of money that could be dedicated and earmarked for that function. I think it's great. Good.
Exactly. You're welcome.
Did you want to?
Steve Carr, 308 Muskerfield Road. I'm a member of the Concord Housing Foundation, but I think I'm speaking for myself. So what happened at the meeting, the vote was 85 to 83. It was obviously very close. I think if you separated out the people who voted for the formation of the committee, there are some people probably in that group who, for whatever reason, don't particularly want affordable housing in Concord. There are other people who, for economic reasons, think that that's not necessarily good. And then I think there are other people who voted for that amendment because they thought we ought to study this subject more. Sometimes those people who are not necessarily in favor of it, but they vote for a committee because that would just delay, the result. That's the real world, I think, out there. Anyway, you put all that together, and I suspect there was a significant majority who, in effect, were in favor of this particular proposal, and that's something I'd like the board to keep in mind. I also would like them to keep in mind when the chair was asked about, what's the timing going to be, the chair, either out of instinct or maybe get a chance to think about this possibility, said, and I think appropriately so, the committee should come up with a proposal to be discussed at the next town meeting. And my concern here and there, this discussion, is that you could be talking about something that would come up with a proposal in 4 years. I mean, that's a very broad scope that you're talking about. I also would say that no matter what number any group tries to establish as the need for affordable housing in Concord, it's going to be much higher than what this would produce. Okay, this is, Charles's proposal would do 4 or 5 houses a year. The need for affordable housing in Concord, I don't think anyone's going to think this will be satisfied by something during 4 or 5 years. So my suggestion would be, this proposal ought to be examined very carefully. There's no reason why it shouldn't be. But to turn around and have 4 other things being decided at the same time, that may be appropriate in other ways, but we really should not delay for lots of reasons, including, I think, the town meeting expects that there will be a response to this particular proposal at the next meeting. And indeed, I would hope that any charge to the committee would say specifically, you should respond to this proposal by the next meeting. And going back to the issue of some people always say, there isn't enough time, we don't have enough time, we haven't heard about this, even though it's been in the Concord Journal, there have been all sorts of meetings, etc. If this isn't done, and something isn't vetted by, you guys would know better than I, people know better than I, November or something or other, we're going to hear that complaint all over again, and it'll be, it won't make it to the next town meeting. And I think that would be not what the town wanted. I also don't think it would be the best result. But for at least those 2 reasons, I think part of the structure to this committee is we need to do something, or we should do something hopefully.
I think there's any intent but to move forward on this as quickly as we can.
As quickly as we can, but the question is depending on how broad that scope is, as quickly as we can could be by the next town meeting, it could be 2 town meetings away, it even could be 3 town meetings. Remember, if this proceeds, it doesn't go into effect right away. It's still a long ways down the road. And I would,
like the town to be proceeding with this, to vote at the next town meeting to proceed with it, and then if it still wants to talk about other alternatives, that's fine, I think, for people who support affordable housing. This isn't going to solve the affordable housing. I mean, 4 or 5 houses a year is not going to solve this affordable housing. But if it turns out to be, after further examination, to be a good idea, which I think it will, then we ought to proceed with it and not have to wait until all the other issues, which could be discussed. There are people who think that we ought to have double housing in town. That may or may not be right, but to put these other subjects in delay this separate proposal, which has been pretty well thought out by Charles. I've heard him at various meetings. It's been pretty well thought out. Doesn't mean it's perfect. It doesn't mean it shouldn't be examined, but I think it'd be too bad if it were delayed because of other considerations. We have an affordable housing issue in town, which this is only going to solve part of it, but we might as well get, I think, involved in going to solve the part of it.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Like,
Lynn Wilbur from Revolutionary Road, and a member of the same organization, but speaking for myself. I think the most critical thing that this organization needs and this committee needs to think about is the fact that land in Concord is very, very limited. There's hardly no place that a builder can buy land to buy a new house and build one. So what happens is that when a house comes on the market that's a moderately priced house, it is often bought by a builder and destroyed so that he can use that land to build another house. And given the expense of the land and the house he buys, blah, 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 it becomes a very big house in order to pay for his expenses. Therefore, what we're ending up with is less and less smaller and moderate-sized houses that are available for people who are people who have less money. And as a result, all our theories are great, but unless we do something to save some of those houses that are moderate size, there just aren't going to be any big houses built, or littler houses built, and there won't be anything for people to buy. So that I think our committee was hopefully, to find a way to save some small number of those houses so that there would be moderate-sized, smaller houses for people to live in over these next years. I can tell you, as someone who took pictures of all the houses that were torn down for the next 12 years we were tearing down about 20 houses a month, every year. Somewhere between I'm sorry, I've had a stroke, as you know, and my numbers are a little crazy, but I know it's the 20th to the 30 years houses torn down each year. And that means all those lots have a big house on them. That's what you get. So that's why I hope we can find some way that you find or the committee finds as a way to make some way to save some of these houses.
thank you, Wendy.
Sorry. I'm still Steve Carter, 308 Mr. Road. One thing I'd like to for those who are thinking about the economics of the situation. Ironically, an hour or two before Article 49 came up, the town meeting, with support, I think, of all the committees, voted to support the Black Birch development. The subsidies, in effect, that the builder is giving in that situation, is more than would be asked for if you want to call it a fee, that the builders would be, developers would be doing it here in this situation. So it's not that houses in Concord can't be built with, builders still not making, they can still make a satisfactory product, even if there was like $100,000 a house subsidy if you do the math on Black Birch, and we only get to 100,000 on this Charles's fee thing if you're talking about houses of 6,000 over. All those houses in Black Birch, incidentally, are less than 3,000 feet, I think, and yet they were still paying the developers. They were paying 100,000, and they're not a nonprofit. They're there
I think, to make money. So the fact that, builders won't be able to build are that concern. Concord, for lots of reasons, most of which, we didn't contribute to, just because we're a thin image, it's a very desirable place for builders to build, and they can still do quite well. And I hope they do.
Thank you.
That's true, when you have multiple unit developments.
Right.
You can spread these costs over a lot of units. It's very different when you're talking about buying down a single family home. So the economics of it gets a little weird.
I don't want to take any more of your time, but
Is there anybody else who wants to speak to this before we?
the question on the floor is 46, Article 46.
49.
49? Okay, yes, I'm sorry. I know I can't see. Well, I spoke at town meeting against this, and I apologize for coming
You
late.
need to identify
Hey,
yourself.
Stevens, Old Farm Road.
And I apologize for coming late, maybe Collins the same.
Charging fees for affordable housing was, I think the proposal of the town meeting was outrageous, as I said at the time. And I think the finance committee,
Well, just for the record, we're not talking about Mr. Phillips' article. We're
Right.
talking.
I know, but you're talking about charging fees.
No, we're not.
No, we're not.
Talking about creating a committee to look
That's right.
at. No, we're not. We're looking at creating a committee to look at ways to finance.
Fine, I'm all for that.
Right.
As I said at the time.
This is not one solution.
Okay, that's great, because I read this and I said, allowing country properties. I was going to, not having heard it, so I apologize for my taking your time. I will ask a question later on, something else.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Seaver.
And thank you, Steve.
Oh, my pleasure.
Yeah, I suppose.
So we will take this under discussion and formulate a draft committee charge.
Yeah, let's
Set
set
our next-
let's set a deadline for next meeting.
Next meeting.
Yep.
We'll pick it up on June
Absolutely.
5th. All right, so let's move on to to Ms. Clark and our potential refunding opportunity.
Good evening, I'm Terry LaFleur, I'm the Finance Director. I am here this evening to talk to you about a potential refunding opportunity we have with some bonds that we issued back in 2009. So in 2009, we issued bonds for the Willard School. Interest rates were obviously higher at that time than they are now. And we do have an opportunity with an upcoming call for this set of bonds to be able to refinance them. And the way that this works is we present the opportunity to the select board, and we ask that if you're interested, that you make a motion in support of the refunding. And then we would go out to the market and we would see if we could get a better interest rate, and if we can, we would bring that back to you. So what we look at is an efficiency ratio, and we look to save 4% or more. And if we think we can save more than 4%, we bring that to you. So our financial advisor has put together an analysis, and he believes that we could save probably about 6.5%. That would be about $413,000 over the remaining life of the bond issue, which is 9 years. So $413,000 is a good amount on a town-wide level. I did a couple of quick calculations just to give you an idea of what individual taxpayers might save. The savings is about $40,000 per year. On the median tax bill, it's about $5.50 annually, so it's not huge, but again, we're looking at the big picture of over $400,000 to the town. For the average tax bill, about $661 per year. That is about 0.7 of 1 penny on the tax rate. And over the life of the refunding for a person with a home of median assessed value, it's about $57. And the average assessed value, it's about $68. So it's not nothing. And again, about or $410 or so thousand. So this is being combined with our general obligation bond issue of 2017, so it's not a whole lot of extra work to go out and just see what we can do. So that's what's being proposed this evening.
So the recommendation is that you could probably
These
see.
bonds can be refinanced one time, is that correct?
One time, the call date for these particular bonds is 2019, so this is actually an advanced refunding. So we would try to take advantage of the current interest rate. We would set up an escrow account. The proceeds for the refunding bonds would be put in the escrow account. We use an investment instrument called SLUG, State and Local Government Securities. There is a current issue, if anybody follows this market, with the debt ceiling that the federal government has, which I think changes on a daily basis. If the federal government does reach its debt ceiling, these slugs are not available, but there are equivalent securities that are available to us that provide the same type of security for this investment, so we could still make it go forward.
And what would be the timing on this? How quickly would you get the bids?
We would be looking to do this early next month. I think we're potentially scheduled to come back to you at your next meeting.
And the estimate is 6.5%?
Right.
So.
Over the life.
Over the life?
Mhm.
It's possible it could be higher?
It could be higher. If it's less than 4, we would just report to you if we're unsuccessful.
That's great.
Yeah.
Never turned down 430.
I gotta do what keep up.
Well, I think I have 5 times
So there is a motion required.
Yes.
Do I hear a motion?
In order to save interest costs, the board moves to authorize the town treasurer to provide for the sale and issuance of bonds under general law, Chapter 44, Section 21A, to refund all or any portion of the remaining principal of and redemption premium and interest on the town's general obligation bonds dated March 15, 2009, and that for this purpose, the treasurer is authorized to provide for the preparation and distribution of a preliminary official statement, provided, however, that no bond shall be issued under this vote unless and until the final interest rates and other terms of the refunding bonds are approved by the board.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Thank you.
Thanks, Terry.
So now I think we get to hear about some more proposed changes.
Yes. So the next item before you is a compilation of proposed changes to the Minuteman-Neshoba Health Group Joint Purchase Agreement. As you all know, we are one of 17 members of the Minuteman-Neshoba Health Group. We purchase our health insurance through this group. The group is managed by a board of directors. I am the representative for the town of Concord on this board of directors. There are a number of changes. We have an agreement that has been in existence and it guides our operations. It is amended very infrequently. The last amendment was back in 2000. And since that time, there are just a number of they're housekeeping items and codifying how we conduct business. And so that's what is included for the most part in this agreement. There is one change that is notable. It is definitely for the benefit of the group as a whole. And right now, if a member wants to opt out of this group, they only have to provide 60 days notice. And the proposed amendment here would be that they have to provide notice by December 1st prior to the new plan year. And the reason that we need that versus 60 days is our plan year begins on June 1st, and as early as January 1st, we're looking at renewing our health insurance rates. So if we have somebody who is opting out after we do our renewal, that could have a negative impact on our rates.
Sounds pretty standard, actually.
Yeah. This is not something that requires approval from the board because the town will vote through me at the board of directors level. But what is required under the agreement is that the appropriate public authority be notified of the proposed changes, and the select board is the appropriate purview of public authority. So I'm here notifying, review the document. If you have any questions or concerns, if you would just let me know, and I can raise those when the board of directors knows.
Well, we've been notified.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now we need to schedule our discussion of the public-private partnership. Which means we need to put it on the calendar and take it under discussion. So, looking ahead, we have a fairly full schedule on the 5th. We also have the next meeting will be on the, I believe, the 19th of June. So I want to take it, what is the board's pleasure? We're missing Alice right now, and I want to acknowledge that. Tom, you've been the liaison to the P3.
Well, Mike and I have been discussing, we put together the proposal, and you've sent that out, I think, to all the board members, so that I'm not sure how much feedback there's been and whether we need.
I haven't gotten any, so.
Yeah.
So why don't I resend it to everybody?
For the introduction, that there was no, people were just in awe.
And that's probably. I'm
Amazed.
So let me remind you, if you have comments, send them to Andrew and let him collect them for the chair.
Right.
Rather than send them to everybody. Yeah.
And Andrew will be back.
And I'm also, Jane, I think the next meeting after the 5th is the 19th.
Right.
I did hear back from Miss Valentine that they would be able to join us on the 19th.
Okay. All right, so that,
The trustees reservation, I didn't want them to come talk to us
Oh, yeah.
about their plans.
Right.
It's not a specific barn plan, it's overall.
Just in general, sure.
I don't think we're aware, Chris, are you aware of any new P3 that you see coming up in the next month or two?
that might be of note or
Not that I can, not that comes immediately to mind.
But I would think then that takes a little bit of the time
Pressure off,
pressure,
right,
if you will, to do that, and I think if we did it mid-June would be fine.
So why don't we schedule this for the 19th?
Yeah, I think that's
Okay, and that'll give everybody time to really delve in to the brilliance that's in front of them.
And I would just, for the record, we sort of have the same responsibility to come back and pick up the Energy Futures Task Force. We had a motion at town meeting, which was approved, of course, but they have other recommendations in their report to us. And including creating a second committee, so we want to get that on the agenda. I don't think it's urgent. What's the status of?
We have a draft job description for the, I'm working earnestly on getting the director, energy and sustainability director hired and issuing an RFP for the consultant. There's two matters funded.
What do you think the timing of that position?
I could see, we'll have to have the job classified. We have draft job descriptions circulating now, perhaps posting that position in 30 days, something like that, and having the person on board 60 days after that. Something. Yeah. And then ideally having the consultant RFP, having that person on board and reviewing the proposals from consultants in September.
Okay.
So I think we've got a little bit of time to, we can pick that up from July.
Yeah, I don't think we need to piggyback that on
No.
the June 19th piece. And I think we're going to talk about a little about our future calendar shortly, so we can think about it, put that then. Okay. So now we're reviewing the proposed MBTA Wi-Fi tower, section 106. Seeing no one here to assist us in that review.
Well, the planning board is meeting to talk about this, am I correct?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow, right.
And only 3 are on the agenda? Were there not 4 towers proposed?
We only received applications for 3.
Okay.
Do we have any say in the matter?
It doesn't sound like
It-
we do.
Very little.
Yeah.
Section 106 is a federal regulation that requires, I'm Marcia Rasmussen, Director of Planning and Land Management for the town. Section 106 is a federal regulation that any project that requires a federal permit must have it reviewed by our state historic preservation officer, which is Mass Historic. They asked the Historical Commission, but they also notify the Planning Board and the Select Board of the proposal. And so the Historical Commission did look at this, not in depth, but noted that many of the sites, the 3 sites that have been identified are in somewhat valleys. There are very few potential historic resources nearby, and so did not raise a lot, some
And we're talking about
concerns.
sites.
3 sites, so there's one proposed off of Arena Terrace, one off Neshoba Road, between Neshoba Road and Ursula Drive.
Right.
And the third is near Bradford Mill and right out Playground. And the one that the planning board is most interested in seeing if there's an alternative is actually whether it could be located on Bradford Mill rather than a tower positioned along the tracks, because that would reduce the impact, the visual impact in that area. Verizon has already approached the owner of Bradford Mill, John Boynton, about that potential for another wireless communication facility at the site, and he thought it would be an easy way to provide for 2 once you have one in place. The other location off of Neshoba Road, we're suggesting that if it could be relocated up maybe 100 feet westerly, it would have less of a visual impact on the property or the buildings on Ursula Drive as well as Neshoba.
And each of these towers are 74 feet, is that?
Yes, that's
Yep.
correct.
So, well, not a lot to discuss because not a lot of authority.
No application is before the Board of Appeals. It's not required because it's the MBTA.
Thanks, Marcia.
Thanks, Marcia.
That was a brief discussion. So now we go on to review the draft calendar, and I apologize since it doesn't appear that we have much in terms of the calendar in front of us. We do have meetings scheduled on the 5th, the 19th, and the 10th of July. I just wanted to remind everybody of that. We've also scheduled our volunteer appreciation reception for June 8th. And that starts at 5 at the townhouse here. And we've also confirmed the date of town meetings for 2018 for the second week in April, beginning April 9th.
Is that consensus?
That was a consensus
So do we have a vote to do that?
to do that.
I think it would be
Okay.
good to officially vote that. Then we'll reserve the space at the high school.
Well, shouldn't we wait till we get a formal calendar? Because isn't
I
it
think that makes-
also meeting days, hearing days?
Yes, you have to set the calendar for all of those events, but it's important to have an understanding that
Well, we could certainly indicate tonight that
Take a straw
since
poll.
this is that we would
Great.
do it.
That's the week before school vacation?
It's the week before, and
the,
well, Easter and Passover are early this year, so it's
So
a
it's not a problem.
opportunity.
and it ensures that school officials will be available at the week before town meetings, so that because the issues do come up, and if we're at the week after, if school vacation week is the week before town meeting starts, often there aren't people available to answer questions.
Okay,
Great.
well, I think that there's general,
Yeah, sounds like.
They're not going to be meeting the gym to play sports.
I wouldn't know. Oh.
But coming back into the select board meetings, could we set dates for the remainder of the summer and set them now? And, you know, it's often the case that one of the meetings in August gets canceled.
Right. I know we had discussed, see if I have a schedule here.
If we continued after July 10th, in our normal fashion, that would mean the next one would be July 24th, and the 2 August meetings would be the 7th and 21st.
I think it was discussed in an earlier meeting to look at, let's see, you just offered the 19th, then we've got the 10th. We had looked at the fact that the 3rd is obviously Independence Day, so we're not meeting that, and that would have been a select board meeting if you followed just every other week. We could meet the 10th, or we could push it out to the 17th and then also do the 31st. It really is up to the committee. And
What was that again, Jane? I'm sorry.
well, we have a proposal here to either meet on the, well, we just met on the 19th,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So we could push to the 10th because we're skipping, obviously, the 3rd. And then do the 24th of July. Which would then put us into the 7th of August and the 21st. But then we would move to the 11th because we've got Labor Day on the 4th.
Yeah, so it's just a question, where we want that 3-week break at the end of August or between July and August.
And I suspect that the better break is, I guess not the end of August. So 10th, 24th,
7, 21.
7, 21.
And again, as we get into the summer, that 21st date is often, or whatever, the equivalent of it gets canceled.
If it's quiet.
Lack of any interest.
Lack of news.
Lack of interest.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I'll review that with.
Great.
All right, so now we are on to, I believe it's public comments time. And I believe Mr. Stevens has joined us.
David Stevens, Hill Farm Works, we'd like to do that last time. I have a question. I have 2 questions and comments. At the town meeting, the measure was passed to inventory all the trees in town and make sure that everything was hunky-dory when builders started to come in, so there wasn't first spacing. I opposed the measure largely because I felt it was unprotected. It was really wasn't protective of the citizens, it was protective of some special interests more than anything else. And I think I said so. I noticed in the Concord Journal recently that there was some notice to the effect that the survey was going to be taken for the entire town starting sometime, which I want to find out, and where it's going to happen. And the conditions were, we'll try to use public access means to get to see these things. If we have to, we'll go onto the property. First of all, I'd like to know, has that begun, and when will it begin, and under what conditions will it begin?
It is planned to inventory all the public shade trees, so those are trees within the public right-of-way are by statute defined as public shade trees. I'm not sure if the consultant has been selected to do that work. The money has been budgeted. It is planned. I don't know if it's started yet.
So part of the...
I think we did say.
Finance director thinks we signed the contract, so the work is probably
So
getting...
part of the question will be, not everybody subscribes to the Journal for reasons. And it's no longer the source, in my opinion. I subscribed to it for many years, and I quit because it does no service to me as a citizen. It simply is I'll say it plainly, it's a social sheet. And therefore it is not a suitable ground for notifying people of when things are going to happen. So I'm wondering whether or not you are going to notify citizens when their area is going to be surveyed, and if not, why not? That's the first question.
So you're asking, would it go out in news and notices?
Yeah, once it gets started, but I don't know if we would leave it to the consultant to decide what part of town they wanted to do and when. Again, this concerns public shade trees, so it'd be within the public right-of-way. Sometimes trees are right on the property line, so even a tree that's partially in the public right-of-way and partially on property, a private property, would be included in the survey.
Well, I understood that perhaps I misunderstood, but I don't think I did, that the entire property was being surveyed.
No.
That's not what I should know.
A tree that's wholly on private land, we would not be surveying.
Okay, because I didn't want to be in a position where I'd have to prosecute trespassers.
Fair enough.
Okay? Yep. On the other hand, if there are such things that need to be done, then I was going to suggest that you might notify at least the area residents where it's going to be done ahead of time, just in the interest of public service. I don't think you can rely on Concord Journal to do that. And ideally, you should give it to every house that's going to be concerned. But if that seems to be a little bit of a stretch. So I would suggest at least give a notice to the area where it's going to be done and when it's going to be done. So property owners won't be excited. Well, I recently had a situation where some guy made a mistake and was spraying my blueberry bushes with all kinds of sprays, and I had no contract for it, and we had a little confrontation over trespass. And I'm out about taking that measure. So that's not a threat, that's just saying I'm not the only one in town who might be so inclined. So I'm saying let's avoid that.
Thank you.
And I guess that's the subset. In other words, this is, for instance, on my particular property, I have a great tree way in the backyard there, and I have a cherry tree, and I have one next to the house, and all this.
All this stuff, only trees on the public right of way, nothing on private property.
So, that's great. I don't have to stay up at night worrying whether something is going to come.
We hope you enjoy your shade trees.
My property is big enough I can handle it. I'm enough of an old codger and an independent person to insist on my property rights. So, and
I can clarify it for everybody, so thank you.
And I think everybody in this town either should or probably is concerned about that. So, you answered my questions. I thank you. And I hope you come up with a good solution for 46. That is the most serious one. Matter of fact, in passing, let me say this. Since it's a public comment on all of it. The years that I've been in Concord, for a number of years now, many years, I used to be, to my hearing and my, so it failed and makes it kind of uncomfortable for everybody to be there. Thank you, that all are happy. I used to attend affordable housing meetings regularly. And over the years, I've seen the affordable housing issue driving the town into a corner. The state has used their measure of threatening to take, bypass our bylaws and everything if they don't have a certain percentage of the town under affordable housing. And that's going to change as the population grows and so forth. Changes. And they're using developers as their enforcement officers. They come in and bludgeon you if necessary. And so the town has, over the years, kind of crawled with it and tried to do their best. And I've sat through many affordable town meetings or affordable housing meetings where people were really sledding it. At one point, one guy, I won't mention his name, said, there was a time before all this started when some of us in town wanted to buy the town and make all of its residents tenants. This is somebody who would know if I mentioned his name, and I won't. But the point of it is, there was a time when people wanted to avoid that kind of involvement altogether. And that same individual was always present at the affordable housing meetings to try to make sure a minimalist approach was taken. I think there's something more that needs to be done. I think that the towns have taken it too long on the chin, and the citizens have taken it too long on the chin to be browbeaten by the state through the developers. Come in and just take property and do what they daggone well please. If we don't meet some standard of measurement. I think the time that the towns and this town get started. We had a fight at the bridge over here once upon a time. I don't know if we've got anybody left who's willing to do that kind of thing, but maybe the selectmen have enough courage to stand up and say, it's time to put an end to this business at the state level. Stop it. We were doing our best. I think the town has bent over backwards as a third of the town to try to meet this. And I think the measure that I spoke against last at the town meeting on 46 was an exhibit of the extremes to which the towns are being pushed, where some individuals even believe that they could pass such legislation as was voted down in 46. It's time, I think, for the selectmen, the leaders of this town, take a good, hard look at this, not only through the committee that you're forming, which I support. That's got to be done. You've got to find a way to do this. But they in the committee have to take a good, hard look at this whole effect of the state of Massachusetts breathing down your neck and forcing you at the point of a gun handled, an economic gun, handled by the developers. We have demonstrated over the years in Concord considerable responsibility and concern and interest in affordable housing. We've bent over backwards. We've taxed ourselves. We've taxed our patience. We've taxed our sense of principles to the point where such things, oddities as occurred at town meeting occurred. It's time to stop that. Now, it's time for the selectmen to get a pair and go to the state and say, look, we do not want to do this anymore. Our taxes, our costs for schools are going up. The cost of living in town is going up all the time. Planning board is running away with all kinds of funny ideas that get shot down every year. We get all kinds of stresses being put on citizens, and as one citizen told me, Florida is looking better all the time. Not Concord. Not Concord. And so I'm just suggesting, as a citizen, as a comment, you can take it or leave it, you can regard me as a nut or whatever you want to do. But I've been here for now some number of years.
Oh, we appreciate it.
But I'm a transplant. I'm not a native yet. I've only been here for 40 some odd years. I haven't died yet. When I'm dying, in case I haven't died. But anyway, I have been active. I've seen this happen. I'm tired of it. A lot of people are tired of it.
We really
And I don't think a lot of people are willing to speak of it.
We've got a fair amount we have to continue to do.
Pardon?
We need to move on. We appreciate your
I
comments.
know that, but I'm not going to be here very often, and I'm going to take this opportunity to make the stress the point
And we appreciate it. Thank you.
that you have to move to the state through our reps
We
and say,
heard your comment.
put an end to this, not only for Concord's sake. Every town around you is being harassed and driven. The people of Concord. Just human like to listen. Thank you very much for your listening. And thank you for the good news.
Thank you, sir.
All right, so now we're reviewing our liaison assignments. And, yes. Obviously Alice is not here, but I've got. Absolutely,
She is all up.
she picks them all up. But I did get a number of comments in. Did everybody have a chance to look at the,
Yeah,
I have noted your day meeting?
Yeah, I'm always interested in attending that MAPC events,
Right.
but they're always, middle of the morning, so
Right.
I feel bad. It's
Does everybody have their list in front of them?
Remember that, I know mine well enough, but the two that are not existent, the wastewater.
The wastewater task force and
yeah.
the CCTV,
CCTV is.
which it seems to me that we are in the process of some change there. So we might want to just hold off
I
on.
think hold off on it.
On that.
If we move forward with the intent that we've been talking about,
Right.
I suspect at some point, somebody will propose that we create a
Advisory committee or something.
committee
Yep.
for that. So I would just wait until we get to
And then there was let's see, I had put the technology committee, I had listed a number of committees that I would call in transition, or one would be the Energy Futures Task Force. We discussed that tonight. Whatever we determined to do with the public-private partnership, the Affordable Housing Study Committee, we discussed that tonight. It seems to be that the tax fairness committee is in an evolutionary state. Obviously focusing at this point on implementation, assuming that the vote on the 8th is positive. And then we discussed a technology committee, but we have it right now under you, but it's sort of
well, it's a non-existent.
it's a non-existent, it's a committee name.
We talked about after you hired Mr. Howes, and then we had a CIO, and the question was if we could create a committee that could be helpful to him. And we talked about it, and then frankly, I think we just dropped it and didn't move forward with it. So
But I think we've discussed it long enough, and there are enough projects in front of us that we need to, especially alongside the CCTV discussions.
Well, I think also with the warrant article that was passed that transfers those funds, there's going to be a substantial amount of money available for that kind of thing.
Right.
It might be a good idea which I would be happy to volunteer to meet again with Mr. Howell and Chris and.
So we would keep that under your.
Yeah, that's fine. Keep, see if we can come up with some
with the charge.
Structure and charge. Is that okay?
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay. So I,
as long as we don't switch the max, right?
it is tradition for the chair to take on the FinCom, which I am happy to do, as well as the school committee, which I am not going to do. And so I'm going to, I think, offer the school committee liaisonship into the.
I'd be happy with that.
Oh, well, I don't know, I think.
Mike wants to do it, that's fine.
There's a lot of meetings.
Right.
So I think on one hand, it'd be good, because when you
can't chair.
become chair, you'll know something about it. On the other hand,
It's a lot.
it's a lot. And I would be happy to maybe split it with you, and you could do the region, and I could do the public, or the first vice, I don't care.
Yeah.
If you want to do it,
No, I think we just splitting.
please do it.
Why don't you, the two of you, come back to me with how you decided to split this
Which one do
thing?
you want to do?
What?
Which one do you want to do?
Which one?
Which one, public schools or the regional?
Take region.
Probably public.
Hey, there
Okay, so
there you go.
Mike, you're our region, and Tom is on.
I think the regional school district teachers negotiation.
Yeah, the
is starting.
CTA is under.
We usually invited to participate if you're.
I think
We're just liaison.
I am,
I think you are.
I am for not participating, but I'm
Observing, yeah.
Observing.
It's good,
So-
good experience.
Mr. Grom is part of that.
Yes. I'll leave it to Mr. Grom to tell the rest of his committee the good news that there's now two. I know that Alice had offered to take the planning board, which is something that I had been covering.
What else do you have to?
And I think that, and I know she also offered to take the cemetery committee, which I'm happy to give her as well, since I'm not, it's been in conflict with the Natural Resources Commission, and I can't cover both. So that, I'm happy with my list now, but that doesn't make it.
The one that was.
MAPC.
And that actually I would like to take on.
Yeah.
So why don't I take that?
Yeah, you've been.
I'm sorry, which one?
The MAPC.
The,
Metropolitan Area Planning
Metropolitan Area
Commission.
Planning Commission in the Magic
Right.
District.
And you're gonna stay with the long range plan?
And I'll stay with the long range plan. So Steve, you were on the 2229 advisory committee, which if you're willing to.
Yeah, I'll set everything else on my list, I'd be happy to maintain.
Okay, so that's, and you are affordable housing.
Yeah,
On this.
I'll be busy with that.
Yes, you will.
I'll be busy. And then kind of like rec department and youth advisory, so that's a nice.
And then are you still set with the ZBA?
Yeah, they're, yeah, if that's
And
okay.
you've got the public ceremonies.
Yeah,
I think that's an in-house.
yeah.
Okay, and so Tom, you have now the CCTV, we'll determine how that plays itself out. And as you said, the wastewater task force, I honestly have no idea what
I
that.
think that's disbanded.
They meet infrequently. I think it's been a couple of years since they've had a meeting.
If there's an issue, they meet, but there hasn't been an issue.
Well, that's good public works planning, right? And you'll see through the schools, okay? And then Mike, are you comfortable with your list of choices? Okay. Now, I don't know that Alice won't want to swap off or offer up some of her committees when she's back, since we've now given her both cemetery and planning board. But it's a big commitment.
Oh, I'm just writers and see.
I will.
Send a revised list.
Is the marijuana issue going to be handled by the Board of Health, or is that going to be a separate?
It's a joint.
Are you excited about it? So, God. It's not an ag issue?
About 60% of what the, Mass Municipal Association has.
Well, they apply on it. Okay.
That's another proposal though, with marijuana moving ahead, that might have a local,
Impact.
well, local
control.
option
Yeah.
for something.
Okay, I think
And
we
it's not
hit,
purely a health issue, although it's largely one.
I think we've exhausted our liaison discussion here. Any miscellaneous correspondence? No. I know that we did receive several heartfelt letters regarding the Estabrook Woods situation. And I believe that we'll continue to look at that. I know that on the 5th of June, we'll see Delia come back to discuss a new parking plan at Punkatasset, which is separate from Estabrook Woods Road, but is certainly part of the recommendations that we accepted from the committee. What was disbanded.
Should we get the title work back on?
That was my.
It hasn't been received yet, but Jane and I will have a conversation with council about how to move forward from here. I think it's time to move things forward.
So.
Yeah, I think we've heard a lot from all sides, and I think, I think our board should just kind of, take all that information and show some leadership, let's make some decisions.
Yep. And I also know that we've heard from the folks at Monument Farms, and they too are engaging, but I think that, again, Delia has taken that up, and I suspect that they will
Sure, probably include that. She's planning to come visit with us on June 5th.
June 5th is going to be the parking discussion at Punta
Just that, not
Well, we might be able to pull a few things
I
out.
thought maybe we were gonna,
The dogs would be a different
different.
discussion. So, any other piece of correspondence?
We received a letter from Mr. Phillips, but I think we've sort of dealt with that in
Yeah,
context
and that in the discussion.
of Article 49.
Yeah.
And just going back to the liaisons again, I have been the designated select person to go to the Financial Audit Advisory Committee. But I think that's an appointment that has to be made. It's not a liaison. I'm a member of that committee.
And do we need to reappoint
I think you
you?
need to reappoint me.
Okay.
But that's an appointed position.
Well, let's put that on our
So
next
get it on the next agenda.
agenda.
Oh, you don't need to reappoint me, but you need to reappoint the select person.
Right.
And they are the chair of that committee.
Yes. And I'm sure there'll be a fight for that chairmanship. So I think that may be the sum total of our correspondence. I believe we have, speaking of nominations, quite a few of them to go through here. Do I have any?
I nominate Suzanne Knight of 64 Bayberry Road and John Soden of 12 South Meadow Ridge to the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Advisory Committee for terms to expire 5/31/2020. And Eric Van Loon of 95 Martha's Point Road to the Tax Relief Committee for a term to expire May 31st, 2020.
That's great. And what you might not have in front of you, but I'm happy to give you, would be a reappointment.
Okay, so we can do appointments now, right? Move to appoint Richard Gauthier of 35 Hubbard Street to the Hugh Cargill Trust Committee for a term to expire May 31st, 2020, and Lindsay Howard of 6 Loring Road to the Library Committee to fill an unexpired term ending May 31st, 2019, and move to reappoint Lawrence Burton Flint of 1643 Main Street to the Planning Board for a term to expire May 31st, 2022.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And now I believe we have some town manager.
There are several positions under the town charter that are appointed by the town manager, subject to the approval of the select board. Therefore, I respectfully request your approval of the appointment of Kelly LaFleur as the town treasurer collector, Pat Robertson as deputy treasurer collector, Kari Tari as the town clerk, and Anderson Krieger as town councils, all with terms to expire May 31st, 2018, and Mary Barrett as town accountant for a term to expire May 31st, 2020.
I move to confirm the town manager's appointments as stated.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
And now we are going to adjourn to executive session,
Not to return to open session for the purpose of discussing two distinct matters concerning land acquisition.
So moved.
Aye. All in favor?